All right, let's get to A Quiet Place Part 2. Finally, I also had the chance to watch this movie. I think it's been out in the US and Australia for a couple of weeks now. Gotta say, the early buzz of the movie has been pretty positive. It's been doing great box office-wise. We talked about it on the last show, right? On Letterboxd, it's 3.8, on IMDb is 7.8, and on Metacritic is 71. So that's not bad at all. John Krasinski really created a good follow-up to a beloved first iteration in a new horror genre property, which is always great to see. Just a heads up as well for the rest of our review. This is a spoiler review because I think everyone has had ample time who is interested in watching the movie to see it. So, Lachlan, can you sum up the movie for us?
Of course. If I could sum up the movie, essentially, following the events at home, the Abbott family now faces a terror more terrifying than the monsters, a PG-13 rating.
Right. The PG-13 monsters lurking about, trying to maximize profit.
Nah. So if I have to summarize the film, I do have to summarize it in two ways. Summarizing it into a non-spoiler review, but to still give you my opinion. I think it's a well-crafted film. Excellently made, well done. And I think that also comes from John Krasinski not having to sit behind the director's chair and also be in front of the camera throughout the entire film. So I think as a whole, this film is crafted better. The best part about this movie is the fact that it doesn't do the horror thriller that it did in the first one. It does thriller action with horror aspects because the gimmick of The Quiet Place has already been done. And John Krasinski knows he can't do that a second time or it won't, because it won't work. It's already been done, so he has to figure a different way of doing it. So he adapts. The biggest letdown for me, personally, with this film is the fact that they now have to face the terrors of the outside world, which obviously, what would that be? And they set it up, it's the people. Yeah. But there's one scene with that. If there was more of a overall threat from that, that would be way more interesting.
Right,
but to set up this movie, the thing is, it kind of feels like an in-between. Like it feels like there's another part of this film missing. Like there will be a third part, which I don't think they're doing a third. I think they're doing a spin-off. I feel like there's a third part of this story that's missing.
I think they are going to end up doing a third part that's not going to be directed by Krasinski, but doesn't have a set release date yet. But I would be so surprised if they cap it off at this. But you can go full on spoilers already, right? And
okay, cool, sick.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. I'm jumping straight into it then. Because I really do feel like this is a second act to a trilogy movie, essentially.
Yeah.
Because each of these films are only an hour and a half long. They are significantly shorter than what some feature films are. And that's something that I really like because I don't think films have to be 2 hours long. I think this is I like being entertained, scared, having fun, whatever, and then out. That's what this movie did. That's what the original one did. But I personally feel like, as a whole, both A Quiet Place 1 and 2 end very, very quickly. They end just as a big thing happens. So the first one, they figured out a solution of how to stop the monsters, right? The second one, they end it after they kill the monster on the island and I guess they've been accepted into the society. I mean, not even accepted, but I did that beforehand. But it ends on an action scene, and it feels like it kind of feels like funny that I'm bringing it up because I was going to bring it up anyway. The Hobbit movies where it always ends on that action, and then it's like the next film continues on from that action. It feels like this ended, and there's another aspect to this film, like they figured out how to stop the monsters, but now they've got to figure it out on a world stage.
Yeah. That is the third part of the film. Yeah. Basically.
And then they got to live in this new world that they set. So it feels like there's missing this last third act that could be maybe resolved in a part 3. But if it's a spin-off, then obviously that wouldn't make sense. I feel like A Quiet Place Part 3 should still take place within the original story.
But for sure,
but resolve the overall idea that the first two have set up, because I really do feel like there's something missing, and I feel like that's what it is. The fact that there's just no definitive end. And that's what's kind of leaving me going, oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong, though. as a start to finish, if I just take it as it is, as they've given it to me, I really enjoyed this film.
Yeah, I would say it's like the best kind of popcorn cinema where no one is allowed to eat popcorn because it's too loud during the screening.
True.
Although, like, there's way more action scenes that aren't just completely silence. Like, the first one was pretty much silent the whole movie, which created such an atmosphere that, that was unique in a way to use sound design and that, like that. And it is now more an action film that has the same issues that most people had in the first one, where there's a couple of like bigger plot holes that might be a bit distracting. But in the overarching story, I think that the action parts, the like suspense parts are done really well. And apart from like a few moments, there's like the one where they go into the radio station and the guy that they meet on the island is like slowly backing away. It's like, no, I gotta go back to my children. So why does this guy? I guess you don't want him for the finale there, but it was so forced to have that guy killed in that moment. I was almost laughing. It was like, this is a bit out of place for like the series who does suspense so well. Regardless, what did you think of the opening scene with John Krasinski?
I was like, man, he really wants to do a one take, doesn't he?
He was etching to do it. He was so on the edge to do that. He really wanted to.
He was teasing us. Nah, it was a good setup. It definitely gives some context. And like, this is what I mean. Because like the opening of this gives us context for both movies. It explains what happened day one. And cool, we see an asteroid or what looks like an asteroid. And it's like, all right, cool. So that's how it happens. It doesn't get too into detail.
Which is great,
all of a sudden,
I think.
Yeah, which is great. Yeah, no, it gives you enough. It gives you enough to kind of make you feel comfortable. Obviously it doesn't baby feed you the
spoon
information.
Feed you.
Spoon feed you the information. It's a really good way of setting it up. But again, they set that up and then it jumped straight back into where we left off. And I thought that was really good. I really did like that. It just jumped straight back in. Cool. The opening, again, I would say was probably really sets up this movie as like, okay, cool, it's going to be well made. Because I think it was smart of them not just to like continue off, because then this movie is able to withstand on its own 2 feet in a way. Obviously, you have to have seen the first to kind of get context on this, but it doesn't just throw Cillian Murphy's character. Cillian Murphy's, I say Sicilian, Cillian Murphy's character.
He's not Italian.
He's not Italian. It's because I've been looking at Italian food all day at Italian restaurants.
That's funny.
Cillian Murphy's character is like, he is randomly thrown in this second.
Yeah.
And obviously they have to set it up somehow. Like, he's not just a stranger. Something I realized is probably John Krasinski didn't think he was going to get a second one.
You think so?
But
I guess
what he did with the second one was pretty good. Like if we think about it, if you were told, hey, we need a sequel and we want you directing, he did a pretty good job for something that he probably didn't want to set up as a sequel.
Which is weird because horror films are usually like done that way, where there's a conclusive end where the bad guy usually dies, and then they just miraculously bring them back in the next one. And like, they don't do that just because there's a pretty much endless amount of these monsters just hopping around seemingly. I mean, we don't know that much about them yet, and if they were to expand in a third iteration, they would definitely go down a route where they would have to explain where they come from if they like had a plan to destroy them all in a more global scale. Should we go through the movie, I guess, kind of beat for beat, big moments? Because like what I noticed with these films is there's not a lot to talk about. It's usually these longer suspenseful scenes, and the movies are short, so they're like less than 90 minutes, right? So there's not that much that happens. It's just that the scenes that we see are really well done. We already talked about the opening. I think, again, we saw Cillian Murphy's character being set up there. What I think is interesting in this, that we do get John Krasinski's character back once more, because the theme of him being this man who can provide for his family and keep them safe, and Cillian Murphy's character can't do that, is like that's an obvious theme in there, like the big strong man who can provide for his family. Which I found kind of, it is a bit weird. It feels like it's almost like a dad fantasy of like being able to provide and keep your children safe. I mean, it's totally fine. This movie's about like wizards in weird worlds and a bunch of hobbits jumping around on trees and all this stuff. Like it's magical and all that, but grounded in this world with the science fiction aspect and horror thing. I found it just interesting to notice that the theme of like a strong male guy was in this. But yeah. Then they escape their farms. We cut back to the end of the first one, right? They just figured out that with the hearing, is it called a hearing aid? Yeah, it's called a hearing aid. Right?
Yeah, it's called a hearing aid.
Of the daughter, they can like open up the brain of these monsters and then shoot them. So to me, it didn't completely make sense why they had to leave the farm and not just like hide for a while, because like it was burning one of the buildings, and like why can't they stay there? I don't know. Maybe this is a dumb question, but did you have any thoughts on that?
The fucking thing's burning down, man.
Well, but it's just one house, wasn't it? Like the main house wasn't even burning down.
Yeah, but the main house is creaky as fuck,
I guess. And it didn't leave with like any food as well, like not a lot of it.
I think they realized they're probably better off elsewhere where they didn't have to, because obviously they built that bunker, that soundproof bunker, and that was their solution. And I think they just didn't have the resources. Plus, a fire can be pretty loud.
It is a lot of crackling there. Yeah, that is true.
So I feel like protection-wise, it would be smarter if they could run.
I think a lot of critiques and plot holes that the first one had were, I think people focused too much on like, oh, this is the very best option of things you could do in this situation. But I don't like that. Like people in movies don't have to be perfect. They got to be human. That's what makes it interesting. So I have no issue with them leaving just because like it's also associated with the death of the dad, and they just want to get out of there and move on. But they don't seem to have a really good plan of how to escape the monsters. But like that's really sick because then they escape, right, and they actually end up killing one or two of the monsters before Noah, no, what's he called? Well, before the son steps into a bear trap, and I was so taken aback at that because I was like, "Holy shit, we got a 12-year-old in a bear trap! That is crazy!" And then we actually get to see it. And you said that it's PG-13. How is that PG-13? It was pretty graphic.
You're telling me, man. What got me more, especially when I was watching it in cinema, was how quickly a lot of the other people will die in this movie with a scream. But that kid just kept screaming for a good like 30 seconds before a monster showed up. So either they were having either the monsters were striking and they were taking, they don't want to kill anything anymore, or
he had plot armor.
But I'm gonna go with plot armor, obviously.
Yeah, obviously there's a few moments where that happens where like for dramatic tension, the monsters of a movie get slowed down, but just because we can see them, we don't get to see them and then they just appear out of nowhere. It feels like they're a bit slow in certain situations. But I think how strong they are was so well established in the opening, like way more than in the first one, because in the first one was like the sound, they show up, they kill you. But here was already showing how you could maybe outsmart them a bit with like sounds and misdirection and stuff like that. And they lean into it way more in this. But then we basically get our main group split up into 3 groups total. The daughter goes with Cillian Murphy's character to, I guess, figure out a way to get rid of more monsters. And I don't know, to me, it didn't seem like she had a plan. It was more like, oh, I can be strong too, like that, and you're not, it's a weird theme to have in the movie, but I guess it gets you to the plot where ultimately you end off with killing a bunch of them again. Actually, what do we call them? Is there a name for them?
For the monsters?
Yeah, I don't think there is, right?
I don't think there's an official name for them, no.
But I mean, they have that scene in the train, and then with the boat people, and the mother goes on Evelyn, actually. I think for the first time we get their names. I don't think we got them in the first one. But yeah, Evelyn goes on a medicine run for the son, and the son is left babysitting, and basically after he makes a bunch of noise has to hide and runs out of breath. So like those scenes in particular, they're not chronologically following one after another, but it's a lot of cross-cutting. And I was wondering what you thought about it, because I thought it was really well done overall.
it builds a lot of tension because it's like obviously all three enter a very high tenseful situation, and that's
Right.
kind of what that's the best way of building tension, is that if every character at the same time is going through some crazy fucking shit. I think what annoyed me was that some of it felt a little, especially the medicine run with Marcus, it felt a little bit too long for what I wanted. Like, it felt like she would have not made it in time, definitely.
Right. Yeah.
With how loud he was. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say. That's all I got. That's pretty much my only downside, because I felt the boat people scene by itself was fucking sick. The idea that they have a girl who nooses them, and then they have like a bunch of noisy things, and the way that what's the character's name? Cillian Murphy's character, Emmett. Yeah, Emmett. Takes him down is really badass. So, and then obviously he learns that they can't swim, or they can swim in the first one, but just in shallow water, like a child. So remember that one goes underwater, and it's like, that's terrifying. Did he just drown? Or,
I think there was the implication that he just drowned. Later on, to me, that thing arriving on the island just makes no sense, other than it has to happen for the plot. It just seems so random. It would just ride this boat like Wind Waker style, like, ooh, let's wait until I get to the next island.
So yeah, that's what I thought of that little scene.
Yeah. What do you think about I guess the really down to the books way of tackling the story? Because like, I felt a lot of the time that it was kind of predictable where it would go. The suspense was still great, and it had some good jump scares, also some a bit annoying ones, I gotta say. But there was still suspense there and tension build at all times. But the story overall was just, I guess maybe because it feels like it's the middle part of a 3-part story. It felt really down to the books, done by the books. It felt really done by the books. Well, what did you think about that?
I mean, is it not by the books? It's a very safe movie.
Right,
I think it's very well done. And again, I think it's because John Krasinski didn't have to sit in front and behind the camera this time. He's just dedicated most of it to directing, and I think that's where he can get a bit better of a focus on an overall idea.
You know how I would call it, actually, because it feels like there's a negative connotation to it. I think it's just a really clean movie overall.
That's a good way of putting it.
You know,
yeah,
you go in and out, like you said. You go in, get your entertainment, your horror, your suspense, and you go out. And you're ready to see the next one whenever it comes out. But then we also got the island stuff right at the end, where they go to the radio station and the thing unleashes. At first, I thought that the boat that he randomly finds, which also kind of odd, like the coincidence there. But it's a movie, it's fine. And then the thing being on it is I don't know, it just feels a bit forced in the story to then bring the chaos to the island. But I guess it needed to happen for the story. I just wish it was done a bit more organically, if that makes sense. But yeah, what did you think about the island, the whole island bit?
I mean, it was paradise, right? And I was just waiting for it to be ruined. So
exactly,
that was really, really cool. A really cool idea, to be honest, that they can't swim, and these guys just been living it up for the whole year. That it's been like that. Yeah, obviously we don't know why the monsters are there, or whether they communicate with each other in any kind of intelligent way. We have no idea whether they're intelligent or not. Obviously they feel a little bit, because when that one drowned, the other one jumped on the boat and it felt like it was going to go save it. But
I think just because I was focusing so much on the one drowning, I didn't notice that the other one was jumping on the boat, and that was the boat
the other one jumped over. It jumped onto the boat to kind of reach up to it. So yeah, no, it's a lot of hints towards things, which again, why it's feel like there's this whole third part which would wrap it all together, where they take it worldwide and they learn exactly what the monsters are. Like,
Atlanteans are real safe from those monsters, actually.
Yeah, true, right? There's got to be, I mean, I don't want the explanation, but it feels like that is what
it's building towards, in a sense.
But yeah, see, the only thing is, because I'm looking at a whole, I really do want an explanation, but at the same time, I'm very happy without it. So I think instead, I will say I don't want an explanation, but I would like, some sort of some definitive resolution. And I think that's what would make the film just a little bit cleaner, where it didn't end straight on climax.
Maybe just speculating here that's the reason why first they're doing the spin-off and then they go on to do potentially a third one, just because if they cap the universe off at the third one and it ends, there's no way of conjuring its way like with a bunch of spin-offs, right? So they gotta, I guess, make sure to squeeze the franchise a bit more because it is horror. So you gotta do that. Paramount gotta get its money somehow. I just hope that it's in as capable hands as possible, and I'm really glad to like I'm really looking forward to Krasinski moving on to more than just horror. I think he said that horror is his favorite genre, but I'd also like to see him do stuff with action. I think he'd be great at it. Even some dramatic suspense stuff, even if it's a thriller. So I think he has a really promising future in front of him, just because the world that he established is like ripe of opportunity. And if it can do that with other properties that aren't just already existing, I think that's a great new creator on the horizon. Is there anything else we want to talk about, the spin-off or the sequel? Otherwise, I think we pretty much, I guess the end of the movie is the double kill at the end. And that's pretty much it. I think that's a sick moment overall. I was like, I had my mouth open, gasping. It was a great cinematic experience to like, it's timed and they both shoot and they both drop. You hear one shot, but two things drop. I think it was really well done, just from a filmmaking standpoint. But yeah, I guess we already touched on it enough that we said that it feels like it's not really the end of the overall story. And there's not much more to say about it than that. I guess comparing it to the first one, which relied so much on the sound design and like the silences, the difference in this one, how did you think it was done with the jump scares and everything?
Well, obviously I said earlier, the gimmick kind of moved on.
Right, yeah.
There was less of it. And one interesting factor I think I really enjoyed was how much more dialogue there was. Like it felt like it was a natural progression from them being able not to talk to then being able to talk, which is quite good. Jump scares there was less of, but still there wasn't a lot of tension building, but there was a lot of tension throughout. And it's why I said the first one's a horror thriller, because what happens, and my idea of the difference between a horror and a thriller is that a thriller will constantly have tension and then it will relieve it at some point. But a horror will constantly up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So in saying that, having them go from more thriller action where it's, they have this tension that builds and they do have little scenes that come up and down, but there's always a constant build of tension where it's not like, what's her name, Regan and Emmett, they don't go straight away home. They go off on a little journey. So that tension hasn't relieved yet. It's still coming up. And then obviously you've got this baby and it's got the gas that's slowly going down to zero. It's like that didn't end. They didn't
Baby's just a tension machine.
Yeah, so obviously it's always raising tension, but this time instead of having it being all the time relieved, it kept building to this part where they felt like they were relieved, and it honestly did. And then that last scene is its own little kind of thing on the island in the recording studio. So yeah, sound design is again. I actually don't think it's as good as the first. I'm going to say that. I think the first is much better. But again, it's because they've moved from a different kind of genre focus into a more natural progression of this set world of action thriller.
Which I think that if like to round this whole discussion and review off, I think that the first one would be a natural progression into almost a complete action movie at that point, right? Right. It's kind of that natural thing because they have now a way to deal with it, and it's just a really capable antagonist, but with these monsters, but they do know how to defeat them, and maybe even on a mass scale now when they have the accessibility to like radio frequencies and stuff like that. So I think there's a promising future for the Quiet. I was about to say the Quiet on Set podcast universe, but the Quiet Place universe. I'm looking forward to the third one if they ever do one, and we'll definitely watch the spin-off for sure when it comes out. So, but yeah, Lachlan, what did you arrive at as a rating for A Quiet Place Part 2?
What did I arrive at a rating at for Quiet Place Part 2?
I'm kind of torn because like
I gave it a 4 out of 5. I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
But I think I gave the original a 4.5. So
I think I gave the original a 9 out of 10 as well, and I was torn between like a 7, 7.5 out of 10, maybe even rounding it off to an 8. I'm somewhere in between there. It's closer to an 8 than a 6. But yeah, definitely worth checking out going into cinemas. Hopefully you get to see it. It's less dependent on it, but you get to see it with a crowd that respects the film and in its more quiet moments, because I think not as much as the first one again, but it really it builds on those tension building scenes. But yeah, that's the end of our spoiler review for A Quiet Place Part 2.